Hi, I'm Jack Davis, and welcome to another episode of The Zone. With me, as always, my less trendy co-partner, co-host, Bobby Malak.
And guys, it's August, which means things are heating up. We got pennant races in baseball, basketball's heating up with free agency closing out. We've got football, thank God, about to get going.
Thank God we have football coming back. And someone to touch on all three of those topics and more, Yahoo sports legal reporter, the man, Rand Getlin. Rand, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So first of all, let's just talk sports. Let's not have to worry about
sports?
We love sports. So you're a big Blazers fan.
I am.
And it's funny because your last name, Getlin, and it's great that the Rockets got Jeremy Lin off the team, but for you, was that one of the best moments in recent Blazer history when Damian Lillard hits that shot over the Rockets?
Yeah, it was really ridiculous, man. I mean, being a Blazers fan for a long time, I went through the J.O. Blazers era, which to me was awesome. Like, I loved Bonzi Wells, Zebo, like
This
that
team's
whole
in
team.
swag.
It was sick.
Swag.
I mean, Rasheed Wallace, it was a lot of fun. So, like, I loved that team, but I understand they were kind of a stain on the community. We're a small community in Portland. We're very tight-knit, and the team didn't collectively represent, I think, the ethics and morals that the city wanted. They were awesome, though.
I kind of feel like that team became a parody of itself, and they purposely went for low character guys. When it was that draft, and like there was that prospect, Quintel Woods. Remember him?
Yeah.
It's like he's great, but he's got huge character issues. He needs
That's
to go.
our guy.
We pick him.
Yeah, it felt like that sometimes. I mean, so I remember distinctly, I lived up the street from Bonzi Wells. So Bonzi used to, I'll never forget this. So I'm in a supermarket parking lot, and Bonzi is taking a girl out of his car, and she has on a blindfold. And it's in a supermarket parking lot. So like we're going to buy, so he takes it off, and then we figured out what would happen, because I saw it a couple more times, is he would pick them up in the supermarket parking lot, blindfold them so that they didn't know exactly where he lived, and then drive them up the hill to his house,
It's
hang
a
out.
sign of a lasting relationship.
It was very interesting. I suspect that's not occurring anymore.
Those types of trust issues are not healthy. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, you probably saw a lot of great things living next to Bonzi Wells, or like, weed was just probably, the scent of weed was just drafting down the street probably 24 hours a day. But
That said, those teams won.
They
did.
They didn't win a lot.
They won games, though.
They were fun to watch. I mean, if you think about it, Rasheed Wallace, like all those guys, they were really talented, but the problem with Portland is it's a fishbowl. It's tiny. It's not Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, you can get away with so much. It's huge. People don't know who you are if you're in your car driving the street. Zebo used to drive down the street in his tinted out Escalade, which we don't have many of, period, but down MLK with weed smoke pouring out of the window. Like, people are going to figure that out, bro. You're not just going to be able to hide that that's who you are. So, things like that kind of broke that team apart. That being said, we went through some lean years after they broke apart that team and that culture, and now we're back to a team that's tons of fun to watch. The community's bought in. You got guys like Damian Lillard. It's awesome.
It's a really good team. Obviously, it's a good team. They made it to the second round this year in a brutal Western Conference. How do you feel, though, in general? Like, do you feel that this is the team that can win the title? You've got a West that's got, KD and OKC. You've got the Spurs. The Mavs are looking better. Houston. There's all these tough teams in the West, plus, all these newly built.
I think they're missing a piece. I personally think that LaMarcus should be the second best player, and Lillard, is he there? Can he carry them to a championship?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lillard and LaMarcus are two guys that we really can lean on as a franchise and build around. I think, Robin Lopez was a very pleasant surprise last year, super serviceable, and played way above where I think most fans thought that he was going to play. But if we had a dominant big, that changes the game. If you look at Cleveland, for instance, they've got a big three now, legit. And we don't really have a big three. We've got a big two, and then a bunch of really good solid role players. Nick Batum, for instance, is great, but a bit streaky at times. So once we get that third piece, I think we'll be in there. But we'll certainly be in the mix. They say they want to win it all. I'm not sure they're equipped just yet, but we're getting close.
I have to say, not to rub this in your face, but as a big Lakers fan, my first great sports memory is when we came back down 15, Game 7, 2000.
Yeah, it's rubbing in my face.
Brian Shaw hitting the threes.
I remember this.
Rasheed clanking the 2 free throws. I watched that YouTube
Ball don't
clip.
lie.
I watch that YouTube clip just way too often. Like, whenever I'm sad about anything in life, that's my go-to YouTube clip. But, like you said, LA is a bigger town.
Yeah.
What's it like? You're in the sports business now. You grew up as a huge fan, spending a lot of time in Portland. What's the mindset around a city that has one team?
That's all there is. It's the only show in town, right? And so now we have the Portland, that is. We have the Timbers. And I've been in LA long enough. I've been in Los Angeles or Southern California more than half my life. So reality is I'm a Southern Californian. But my formative years, 12 till 23, were spent in Portland and around that area, in Eugene when I went to college. all you had was the Ducks, the Beavers, and the Blazers. That was it. Now they have the Timbers, which people have gone nuts about. We don't have baseball. We don't really have football. So I didn't grow up with any other team besides the Blazers, and that's all we really knew about. Then when I went to the University of Oregon, I adopted all their teams and became a big fan of the university and their programs. But it's different than LA. We got the Clippers, we've got the Lakers, we've got the Angels, we've got the Dodgers. I mean, you go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And that's not even talking about MLS. And
do you think it
some
puts
serious
more
sports.
pressure on the players? Because when you're talking about one piece and needing a big man, I think Greg Oden, that probably could have been that guy. And it was probably such a struggle for him being in a city. Everyone has the expectations. The Sam Bowie passed. What's that like for the players?
Yeah, it certainly puts more pressure on them. And again, the fishbowl effect, I think, is a big deal, right? You don't get the opportunity to mess up. Damian Lillard, for instance, during I believe it was his rookie season, he's from Oakland. He's from a rough part of Oakland. And so, friends that come from home, even if you're on your best behavior, the standard of conduct in the inner city is different than mainstream America. Portland is very much granola, kind of hippie-centric.
It's where the young go to retire.
Yes, exactly. The dream of...
My sister lives in Portland, and she is a granola-eating hippie.
Yeah.
I love you, Catherine, but it's true.
Dude, when I saw Portlandia, it was perfect.
Spot
The
on.
dream of the '90s is alive in Portland. Guys running around on beach bikes. But anyway, it's interesting. So that aspect of it is, I think, puts a lot of pressure on them. But then also, to your point, that's all there is there. So that's why when Damian Lillard knocks down that shot against Houston,
It means more.
it meant so much to the city. And even though we got destroyed by the Spurs in the next round, it's something that Portland will hold on to and build upon. And it is special to the city. So we're underdogs all the time, and most Portlandians kind of have that mentality. And I think it drives, people in Portland, whether they're imports like these guys or those of us that are from there, to try and be better.
Now, you're a huge fan of the Ducks as well.
Yep.
Ducks are huge in that state. They've got a great team coming back, Mariota coming back. How
Yep.
do you feel about the Oregon Ducks this season?
I think they're going to have an incredible season. They just lost their left tackle, Tyler Johnstone, to an ACL. It's his second ACL injury, I believe. And so that's going to be a big blow to them. Losing your anchor left tackle is not a good thing. But ultimately, I think the team is equipped to make a deep run. Now, can you make it through a Pac-12 schedule without losing any
Very
games?
tough Pac-12.
Certainly.
USC is
Do you
gonna
think
be
the
better,
Pac-12
UCLA 's
doesn't
good.
get its national due? Because I think SEC is number one, but I think Pac-12 could really be the second strongest conference in football.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've certainly made a case for that as of late. And for me, when I look at the Pac-12, I have to divorce myself as a reporter. It's interesting. You talk about being a fan of these teams, and I am unabashedly so. I don't hide it. But at the same time, I have a duty to report objectively, right? But all of us have biases in life, and so you have to be careful to make sure, in my mind, at least as a reporter. I've always hated this notion that none of us have allegiances. We do. It's just most reporters hide it.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't hide it. I put it out there and say,
It's better to accept it.
100%. Well, and it's also better to inform your readers. Like, this is how I grew up. I grew up in the state of Oregon. This is what I like.
And this is actually the dream segue into talking about how sports media has changed. And being a fan, do you feel like people can almost embrace you more because you're being honest? Obviously, one guy who's at the front of this trend is Bill Simmons,
Yep.
right? His original website was the Boston Sports Guy. And I almost feel like fans can connect to Simmons more because instead of some bland, boring guy who's just giving you the unbiased take, I'm a Lakers fan. I love reading his anti-Lakers stuff because I get mad. I'm like, oh, Simmons. At least people can connect to you by taking a side.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I'm really all about transparency in my professional career. I think that it's something that's very important. If I'm going to report on college football, people should know I went to the University of Oregon. I cheered on the teams. I lived with football players. I'm a Ducks fan. That does not mean that I won't report objectively on them. For instance, we talked about this prior to going on. The first investigative report I ever did, substantive at least, was on the University of Oregon, and it was on our football program, and it was something that ultimately they ended up facing some NCAA sanctions for. So this isn't something.
Did you feel a little bit like a Benedict Arnold there? Was there some guilt that you had as a fan, knowing that you were going after your own guys?
Yeah, I mean, my partner called me Kaiser Sose, and I felt a little, I felt that. But the reality is this: it's my commitment is to the truth. My commitment is to making sure that I report as fairly and accurately as humanly possible. And if that means that my university is in the crosshairs on stories like that, so be it. Now, I've since kind of gone away from investigative work as the totality of what I do, but it's still a part of what I do. And the reason I do it is I think it's important in this space. When we started doing that investigative reporting, there was no discussion about compensating athletes. People thought you were crazy if you said that the NCAA wouldn't look the same 5 years from now that it did today. And down the road now, I started in 2010, it's 2014, about to be 2015. Completely different situation.
Totally different. So do you think college athletes should be paid? Because this is, I love what you said because it's talking about the actual change you can affect as a sports reporter. And for me, there's no bigger change than college athletes being totally exploited by a system that does them no favors.
And at the same time, if you look what's kind of brought this down, it's been a ton of these investigative reports because you see these programs being pulled down, and as a fan, you start to look and realize like the systems that they're playing under are pretty messed up.
Yeah, so both of your points are really good. I mean, what I started with was, hey, look, if these programs won't change because it's the right thing to do, or the NCAA won't change because it's the right thing to do, then the best way to force them to examine themselves in a critical fashion is to just tell the truth about them, shine a big spotlight on them. They say sunshine is the best disinfectant. And when we started, people are like, well, UNC stuff doesn't happen. People don't actually cheat in these classes. There aren't jock classes. Like, are you kidding me? I went to the University of Oregon, and I talk about the same thing. Rocks for Jocks was a class that I took and did very well in, and did absolutely no work. Nothing. Why? Because I lived with football players. I said, what classes are you guys taking? I'm taking this. Did your academic advisors put you in those classes? Yep. I want to be in those classes. I'm going to get great grades. And that's how I had a buffer on my GPA my first 2 years of school. So it's like,
Wish I knew to do
gotta
that.
be honest. I crushed my hip hop appreciation course the second semester senior. My lyrics were on point. My discussion of
Using
how
Rap
Lil
Genius
Wayne
for
has
that?
gone downhill with the Carter 4 versus the Carter 3 was pretty bad. I totally see your point, and I think that speaks to just the hypocrisy of college sports, which is like all these institutions are sacrificing their guys' education, they're pushing them through school, and then making millions and millions of dollars off of them.
yeah. And so to answer your initial question, I think they should be compensated 100%. It's not even a question anymore. And so we've got this court finding in O'Bannon that says, well, we can cap it at no less than $5,000 per year. Well, what does that do for Manziel? There's studies out that say he generated hundreds of millions of dollars for Texas A&M, whether it be in donations or stadium renovations or whatever. So it's like, just stop the nonsense. Pay these kids what they're
Pure
worth.
capitalist market.
Let the market function.
The fear then, though, is that it's going to destroy these ancillary sports. Is that if the programs are starting to have to spend this kind of money on a football program, on their basketball program, that you're going to get hurt on your swim teams, your lacrosse teams, your whatever water polo teams.
Yeah. So look around the NFL. The reason that they don't have these Taj Mahals like Oregon again, we've got Nepalese woven rugs that the players are walking in because we don't know what to do with all the money we're generating. I mean, they literally don't know what to do. So they've got Italian, Ferrari leather seats for their players to sit in, and like waterfalls and all this crazy stuff. Again, stop the madness. Like if we lose swimming and lacrosse, et cetera, and they become club sports, my answer really dissatisfies a lot of people. That is the market in action. That's what happens. If you cannot support yourself as a sport, you got to fold.
Let's take
lacrosse out of that.
I love lacrosse too.
Doing well.
Was it club lacrosse or was it varsity?
We were MCLA, so lacrosse is a weird system.
So you were a club, but you don't want to admit you were a club.
No, it was club, but we played like Division I programs.
And
played
got crushed.
Well, so check this out. So that's my point, right? Oregon had a club lacrosse program too, and I knew a bunch of guys on teams, and they were exactly they were extremely good, and they did that all themselves. Yeah. Now, was it like harder than a football team? Of course, but the reality is it's not a revenue-producing sport, or at least not a profit-generating sport. Yeah. So for me, I was a wrestler. Like, you're not going to tell me that I deserved to have, all the best stuff and the same amount of money as the football players. I didn't. We did not generate revenue. And, that's the bottom line. That's what our country is built upon. And so you've got guys like, this is a really important piece that I always point out. I think this dude is ridiculous. Steve Patterson, the Texas AD, and he used to be the Blazers president. Yeah. Guy says out of one side of his mouth the other day, why should we have to support the smaller schools with our money? We're generating over $100 million a year, and Dayton isn't generating anything. So why should we have to support them? If they're not making money, we shouldn't have to hold them up. And then I say, well, what do you think about players getting money? He's like, well, I think that the 4% that are making all of this money, they need to share that with everybody else because we can't lose these other sports. And you're like, dude, are you listening to what you're saying?
Perfect. That really speaks to the hypocrisy so much. And for me, like, my favorite line that people use is when these NCAA presidents be like, well, normal students don't get paid. Right. Well, normal students aren't putting in that huge commitment.
Right.
Yeah, but also normal students don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. and be there during the summer and be there during the off season and risk life and limb to their bodies. You know what I mean? Like, I always hear that. We're like, well, then if we start paying them, they're just, they're college students doing an extracurricular. Shut up.
Yeah.
It's just all these, old school presidents trying to keep money in the school's coffers instead of having it go to the kids.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So, I think the next thing we're going to talk about is the shifting of sports media.
Yep.
And as we talk about this shift in, the way college sports, for example, there's been much more awareness around this. Do you think Twitter has played a part in that medium? The fact that a medium like this can disseminate information. And I remember Jay Billis one time had a tweet about college athletes not being paid, and information like this can go viral, and it favors the youth.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, one of the things that I think has caused this dramatic shift in terms of perception about the NCAA is Twitter. And the reason is because of, one point is what you pointed out. It's the lightning.
Yeah. Well, there's a place for people to say their opinion.
Right.
In the past, there's this cloak of shadows saying, no, the fans like the BCS more.
Yes.
No, the general consensus really isn't the players should be paid. It's just
Right.
the media making this up. That doesn't exist anymore.
Right. You get a real-time gauge of what public perception is. Now, Twitter can be a bit of an echo chamber, right? Because not everybody's on Twitter, and to those of us that are on it, it
The
feels
most
like
dramatic opinions on the
yeah,
other side. of
for
people
sure.
on Twitter.
And you feel like, because we're all so engaged, like it feels like everybody's on there, but they're not. We're still a pretty small minority of society, but it's a good cross-section, right? And so I think that technology at large, not just Twitter, but all of these things, whether it be Instagram or Facebook in its earlier days or Snapchat or whatever it is, it's increasing the flow of information. It's increasing our ability to communicate complex thoughts and forcing us to do so in truncated spaces. And so I think for the kids, I interact with college kids now, football players all the time. They hit me back channel on DM like, hey, this is so unfair. We're getting, taken advantage of by our schools. What do we do? I'm scared to speak out, but what can I do? And so that, to me, that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. That kid wouldn't have been able to get a hold of me or anyone else in my space. And so now I hit him and say, here's my cell phone, bro. If you ever need me, hit me up. We can talk offline. Don't worry, I'm not going to out you.
So that's probably a huge tool for you as a journalist, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about, there's such a struggle to get sources in the 90s, even early 2000s, right? Sources now are finding you. You don't have to go find sources.
That's very true, and it allows for this instant connection, right? Now, I have my direct messages open. I don't know that a lot of people do this in my space. If you go look at somebody like Jay Billis and you try and direct message him, you can't. I have the luxury, because I don't have 1 million followers like Jay, to leave mine open. I don't get overwhelmed. And so if anybody ever does want to contact me immediately and back channel, they can do so. And I do that on purpose.
Yeah, but Jay Billis is a dick and doesn't follow anyone back. Like, come on,
You a little
Billis.
salty here? Jay Billis, would you follow Jay?
I mean, Duke alums, he should follow me. But
Salty right here.
Jay Billis gives the negative rep to Duke, because the negative rep to Duke is like elitists, and he refuses to follow one person on Twitter. Come on, Jay, be a good alumni.
The reason he does that is because of this very reason right here. Jay is amazing at trolling people and forcing them to bring them into the discussion. He's amazing at it.
Yeah.
I
We're
guarantee you
right
this.
now, it works.
He has a ghost account, and I guarantee he follows a ton of people, because the rapidity with which he replies to some people's stuff, there's no way he's doing that by being
That's too much effort,
So-
Jay. Take the ego out of it and follow me and others.
So you touch on why it's in a lot of ways better for athletes, because they can get in touch, they can report things that are going on that are wrong, whether that's the NFL or college level. It's also really terrible for them.
There's the flip side.
Every person in the world is a member of the paparazzi now.
Yeah.
Everyone could be a TMZ source.
Yeah.
Do you think that these players are being held to unfair standards? You look at someone like Johnny Football. We talk about Johnny Football every goddamn week, and it's because something's happening with him every goddamn week.
Yeah.
He's just having fun. He's 22 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So for Johnny, you're a quarterback. You're held to a different standard, period, right? You've got Andrew Luck with the flip phone in Indianapolis doing absolutely nothing, right? This is a guy that, you couldn't even imagine being in a club. What would that look like, Andrew Luck in Greystone?
I think he may be reading econ books or something.
Yeah.
I think
Late
he's
at
got
night.
hobbies, some cool
Working on his
outside
architecture.
hobbies.
But that's the
Chemistry.
whole point. That's why people love Andrew Luck. I mean, I know some Indianapolis fans because I've spent some time out there. That's what people want out of their sports stars, though. They want it to be like he wakes up and he eats, sleeps, and drinks football. And when he's bored, he looks at more tape. And then when he's bored of looking at tape, he plays and he lifts and he goes to sleep and does it again. People don't want their sports stars to be people. And I feel like what social media hurts them is actually seeing that they have a life. It's like, why aren't you playing baseball right now? Why aren't you training?
No, you're 100% correct. I mean, so to your point, there's a flip side, right? But Manziel has to know that he is the one that's causing the trouble for himself. He knows he's being followed around everywhere. I know where he parties in the city. I know the people that take him out to party. And it's when you think about that, there's only one place you can go in the city and party and not worry about TMZ catching you doing whatever it is that you're doing inside that club. And that's Soho House. And he's not partying at Soho House. He's partying at Greystone. He's partying at Emerson. He's partying at all these different places where when we walk out, the paparazzi is there. When we walked out the other night of Warwick, there's paparazzi everywhere. If you go party at Warwick, Johnny, there's going to be paparazzi outside. They're going to catch what you're doing. You're going to be on TMZ, and then you got to answer questions. So this whole it's not fair that they're asking me questions, et cetera. It's life, bro. Deal with it.
I think he brings it on himself.
Yeah.
Real quick, for as much as you upset Bobby with your lacrosse comment, you just made him thrilled with your Soho House comment. Because Bobby thinks he's so cool for going to Soho House. And if me and Bobby have to meet about anything, it's going to be at Soho House. I happen to be at Soho House
Jack,
right now.
I just like having the upper hand. I just like letting you know who's really in charge of this show.
That was a good flip. That was a good way to flip it back
the
on me.
whole thing.
Well, I'm going to go to Warwick with Johnny Football. But no, seriously, and I think part of the
Johnny,
thing,
if you want to go to Warwick with us, we're happy to go to
We're
Warwick
free for
tonight.
Warwick.
We are down.
But I do agree that Johnny brings it on himself. Because
Yeah.
first of all, he went to the next level. At first, it's like, dude, I'm just drinking champagne and rolling dollar bills on my stomach in bathrooms. Like, okay, you really got to take a step back
only
now.
one use for a roll dollar bill in a dirty bathroom.
You can't do that idea,
Just don't
Johnny.
touch.
But I do think that a lot of it is that voyeurism always invites criticism.
Certainly.
Right? Which is when Bobby, my good buddy here, who thinks he's so cool for Soho House, posts an Instagram. In New York, hashtag not so bad, as a beautiful view from some amazing hotel. It's like, shut up, Bobby. Like, you're not cool. And, obviously, Bobby.
Johnny Manziel has lots of internet haters. I have one internet hater.
Yeah, that's
it's
me.
Jack.
But
He's my troll on social media.
But the point remains, which is that when you're showing people your life,
Yeah.
you're inviting criticism, and athletes obviously have these privileged lives. And yeah, maybe for Johnny Football, it's a higher degree. But I know, and you can probably, you're giving us great insights. You probably get insight of this. Athletes who say they don't look at who Twitter messages them or who comments, they read the trolling comments, they get upset,
Yeah.
and then it invites a way for people just to try and upset you and knock you off your game and bait you into a dumb comment.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the downside of Twitter, right? It invites criticism from the lowest common denominator.
Yep.
People that have no idea what they're talking about, but they have a megaphone, so to speak, to get to you. But
A megaphone and a blanket covering who they are.
100%.
So it's an anonymous
Exactly.
thing. No one's going up and hating on LeBron James in person.
right, and it's frustrating, but like now we have, and this is my favorite Twitter feature, thank the heavens for it, is the mute button. So you can literally just like, if somebody says something stupid in my comments now, I don't even hesitate. I don't respond, I don't do any of that. I just mute them, and I never hear from them again. Now they're still following me, right? Because there is value in having followers. I used to block everybody, but that's kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face. We need those followers to build our brands, for all these reasons, because it's important in today's day and age in our space. But, for Johnny, this is what I think is really fascinating about his situation. So you guys bring up a good point, right? Everything he does is tracked, but he's kind of like the first guy in our space that has this kind of attention around him. Cam Newton, imagine if Cam Newton came
I know,
up
it's
in
going to get
Twitter.
worse, though,
Yeah.
because
It is, but here's the thing, though. I think it's going to be a good thing for us, right? Think 5-10 years down the road. Are we going to continue being outraged about these guys living their lives, being 23-year-olds, because that's what 23-year-olds do?
Yeah.
Or at
Is he
some
just the
point,
first?
are we just going to become comfortable with the fact that, like, look, these guys are human beings. As long as Manziel goes out there and wins,
Yeah.
all of this gets erased.
But
If
he-
he loses, it gets amplified.
here's where I disagree with you.
Yeah.
Or I understand your point, but here's, I think, one point that should be brought up. The presidents of NFL teams, the executives in the NBA front office, MLB owners, those guys are all always going to be over 40 years old, over 50 years
Yep.
old, over 60 years old.
Yep.
So the people who are making decisions that can affect athletes' livelihoods will have never grown up with that. So it can hurt these athletes. So while the public may become more accepting, the
guys
people
are
writing the
always gonna
checks
get a chance.
won't.
The biggest guys are always going to get the chance out. Johnny Football, it
He
doesn't
fell
matter.
at 22. He fell at 22.
But he fell to 22. Like, he's still
You
getting a
think that
chance
if
to
he
earn time.
was just like Tim Tebow-esque in terms of being very quiet off the field, religious, and played the way he played at Texas A&M and trashing Alabama, he would go to 22. You don't think his Twitter and whatever?
If he was like Tim Tebow and 6'4", 220,
I'm
he
not
would've been a
talking.
top
I'm
five
talking about
pick.
his production.
That's what I'm trying to tell
You're
you.
saying.
I'm saying that he did not fall because of the drinking.
I
He
disagree.
fell
I
because
totally
he's
dis-
small.
Johnny fell more, I agree with you. I think Johnny fell more because of considerations about his durability, right? And the way that he plays the game. If you think about, for instance, last year, look at Brian Hoyer, the other quarterback that they have. Shredded his knee, you lose your guy. So the way he plays the game, but to say that his social activity was not part of the calculus is short-sighted. When these guys make decisions, we like to make it black or white. It's not. It's this big, they spent a year, 2 years maybe, vetting this kid, saying, is this a guy we want to take? They took him at 22, right? They knew what they were getting for the most part. But the kid is polished. You get him in front of a camera, he seems like a saint. And then you get him out and about,
It's just,
regular
if
dude.
I'm the owner of the Browns, right? If I'm Jimmy Haslam, and maybe Jimmy Haslam's a terrible example because it turns out his company was maybe, doing some fraudulent activities. Okay, fine. If I'm the GM of the Browns, if I'm the coach, Mike Patine, we think he's
It's changing
a good guy.
every 8 minutes, so I can't remember who it is.
If I'm the coach, I am deciding whether to play these guys, and I care about football. My job's on the line. My ass is on the line. I don't want the whole world knowing that the guy I'm considering for my starting quarterback is getting hammered in Vegas. I think that's a fair thing, which
Yes.
is,
Here's the difference.
you're allowed to live your life But would you text, your boss a picture like, I'm drunk right now?
You're hurting yourself, but you remember that the NFL is a what have you done for me lately league. That these guys live and die by their record that year. And at some point, yeah, you like the idea of Brian Hoyer being a Boy Scout as your quarterback, but at some point, if you're losing, you've got to make the decision.
But it still hurts you. Terrell Owens, right?
Yep.
Chad Ochocinco, maybe, these guys probably could have made teams, and they didn't make teams at the end of their career. Maybe their careers are shortened. They had a reputation for being an asshole.
You're both absolutely correct in terms of like your basic premise, right? So like, yes, these are considerations that coaches, GMs, front office guys have, that it's their job's on the line, right? So if you think about it, higher ups, what are they trying to do? They're trying to hang on to power. They've already gotten to the top of the ladder, so what they want to do is maintain their perch. There are guys in the middle of the ladder, though. These are the guys that are pushing the Johnny Manziels of the world. Like, if we win on this, we're gambling. We're going to shoot these dice. If we come up big, we're going to win big. And so my point to you is this. Like, we'll see how it plays out. But the Johnny Manziel effect, we're going to look back on this in 10 years and be like, that was the first guy. That was the first guy that was in this fishbowl like this. He was the first Truman Show in the NFL as a quarterback in this new social media age. But 10 years from now, think about how much more invasive social media can be. And so kids will learn, like, as a quarterback, you're never going to get away with acting like he acts and not get scrutiny. It's going to be crazy. But if he goes out and he puts up a 13-win season, a 14-win season, which is way outside the realm of possibility, I think, for the
Cleveland,
Browns.
how about 6?
Let's
How about 7,
let's
8?
moderate our thing. But say it happened. Who cares anymore? Nobody cares at all. So that's the question. When the rubber meets the road, when he gets on the field.
I want one thing to happen. I want Johnny Football to win the Super Bowl, because imagine the Instagrams and tweets afterwards. Oh my God, he would go
no one
nuts.
would be more self-entitled.
He'd have the trophy in a bucket of.
So
not even Johnny. Think about all the tweets and Instagrams from Drake. You know how many jerseys he would have made up with number 2, Johnny Manziel Love Fest. Yeah.
So let's, as we talk about the Cleveland Browns here, let's talk about what do you think about this NFL season? What do you see happening in the AFC and the NFC?
I think overall, if you look at it holistically, there are a lot of really strong teams out there. I think the Chiefs are really exciting. It's something that I want to watch. We were talking about this offline. DeAnthony Thomas being added to that team. You've got Jamal Charles. Now you've got a lot of options. Again, if you can imagine DeAnthony Thomas coming on a fake fly sweep, what that does for Jamal Charles if he's going opposite field. They've also got a strong defense.
That's a really good division.
It's a really good division.
You got the Chiefs. The Chargers are going to be good again.
Yep.
There's that one team that won it last year and the year before that.
How'd the Super Bowl
Bronco.
go?
Okay.
They exist too. Yeah.
How did it go for the Rams last time they were in it, Bobby?
Last time we were in the Super Bowl, we lost.
How'd the World Series go for your Cardinals?
We lost.
Oh, you also
Just
lost.
twisting the knife.
Yeah.
Ouch.
So brutal.
Hey,
We won 2 World Series the last 7 years. Anyway.
I think the Rams are going to be good this year. If you get Janoris Jenkins to have a breakout year, you've got Robert Quinn who put up 19
The defense
sacks
is going to be
year.
disgusting.
It's going to be disgusting.
You've got a front line of Bob Quinn. You've got Chris Long on the other side. Adding Aaron Donald to that team with Michael Brockers. There's going to be single.
That line's going to be crazy.
Yeah, there are going to be one-on-one matchups on the line, and then you've got a guy like Greg Williams who are just going to make animals out of some of these players.
Oh, yeah. And you put, Janoris Jenkins on an island and let him play ball. That's a guy that has really good ball skills. He might come up with a lot
That
of
NFC West is brutal, though.
It is, but I think you guys are going to be stronger. The addition of Trey Mason, if you can get that running game going, you guys are going to be scary. And that's one thing that you guys were lacking last year. And my fantasy fortunes, unfortunately, fell apart as a result of that lack of a running game because I had a couple St. Louis running backs. But, I think Trey Mason has a chance to be special. You got Greg Robinson on the offensive line. So they're a team that I'm looking at saying, I really do think the Rams can make some waves this year. I'm not saying that they're going to be contenders right away, but they certainly last year flashed some signs of brilliance, and they could do so again this year.
I know it's early, but if you had to pick Super Bowl team right now.
It's hard at this point to root against the Seahawks. Now, it's really difficult to repeat, as we all know.
Lost a lot of players on that line, too.
They did lose a lot of players, but the thing about Pete Carroll is he's proven over and over and over again that he's able to field competitive teams. So the 49ers are an interesting team out there. Obviously, again, they're going to be strong. And then if you force
Saints are getting a lot of love. Saints are getting, they're kind of the preseason darling. Do you think they're getting too much love? I love me some Jarris Byrd on that defense, but
their defense is scary. Okay, so you add Champ, you got Jarris, and then here's where I think it really gets special for them. Brandon Cooks, when you play him in the slot, and you've got Kenny Stills running more vertical routes than any other player in the entire league, and the completion percentage that Drew Brees had with Kenny Stills individually, and then you've got Marcus Colston coming back. He's actually healthy now. People have forgotten about him, but he's a beast. So if you put those three receivers alone together, you're forgetting about Jimmy Graham. Drew Brees is going to have a career year in my mind. If I was to bet on any quarterback to have a career year, that's the guy. That offense is going to be crazy.
Yeah, so, it's going to be a great NFL season. But before we let you go, we want to make sure we talk about a few fun topics.
All right.
So first of all, real quick, sports cars.
Yep.
I know you're a huge sports car enthusiast. Yep. I know this is a classic question, but what's the dream car?
If I had any amount of money right now to buy a car and put it in my garage, it would be a McLaren P1. It's the most gorgeous car I've ever seen. It's the car that makes me get goosebumps when I even think about it. And watching Chris Harris, who has the best job in the universe, drift it around the Yas Marina track was like the most beautiful thing ever. And I think I told you this on the phone. I've watched that video, which is 19 minutes, probably 10 times already. And I'll watch it another 10 times before the week's out.
I'm kind of a classic car guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to go 1955 Porsche Speedster.
There you go.
I want to channel the inner James Dean.
I can appreciate that. Beautiful car.
Again, I don't want to make this go lightning round, but we have a few things we just have to ask you,
Yep.
and one of them is this. And this is different than a sports car, but it's probably the most serious thing we're ever going to ask you. We know you're not a big hooper,
Yeah.
but you got to play a game, one-on-one. You got to go against any celebrity, and it's competitive. This is going to be an intense, competitive game, one-on-one. What celebrity are you challenging?
I'm playing Shad Moss, a.k.a. Bow Wow, just for the simple fact that he wants to be called Shad Moss now, and I just call him Bow Wow the whole game, get into his head, see if I can throw him off. And he's a pretty good hooper, so if I could beat him, I've got some height on him, it'd actually be kind of a coup.
I was really hoping Bieber. Every episode,
Can't do
everyone
Bieber,
says
man.
say Bieber.
I don't want
man.
anything to do with that guy.
Oh, that's why I want to play him a one-on-one. I think, you're saying if I had all the money in the world, I would be like, Bieber, here's the purse for the game. Let's go, one-on-one.
Pink slips.
I'm going to beat you. I just want
Pink
to
slips
beat
for the
Bieber.
McLaren.
Fair enough.
So let's do a who would you rather. Or not who would you rather. Wow, messed that up. Let's do a would you rather.
Yeah.
So would you rather go to the bar as a wingman with Rory McIlroy or Johnny
Newly
Football?
single.
Newly single,
Rory
Dunk
McIlroy.
Wozniak.
Just won his second
Back-to-back.
major.
Majors, back to back.
I wish I could go with Rory. I personally think he's a cool guy, but golfers will never be as cool as premier football players out here. And Manziel has a girlfriend. I've got a fiance, so this is kind of an irrelevant discussion for me. But if I was single, I would go with Manziel because
Do you have to go out in Cleveland with Manziel? I don't know if the talent.
That's
Talent
a
stacked
fair
up.
consideration. Out in LA
gonna
with
be-
one of them, it's Manziel. That's my guy.
You always got to ask questions.
You're right,
Jake.
though.
Gotta ask the questions.
That's a good point.
I love Cleveland. There's some beautiful women in Cleveland.
Would you rather Trailblazers championship or Oregon Ducks national championship?
Oh man, I would say that I would rather see the Blazers win an NBA championship because the Ducks are going to get there in their own time, hopefully. But the Blazers really are kind of a central element of Portland's entire identity, so it'd be cool for the whole city.
Do you have any would you rathers, Bobby? I know you love the would you rathers.
I'm good. I'm would you rather out.
All right. Well, anything
More
else you
importantly,
want to
yeah. What do you have going on right now?
Working on a ton of stuff. So heading into the NFL season, a big force of my professional endeavors at this point is getting into breaking NFL news. It's something I started last February. So you're competing against the Adam Schefters of the world, guys like Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, Ian Rappaport, all guys that I respect tremendously, all guys who are very good at
Are
their
you
jobs.
guys competitive with each other?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look.
Is there smack talk?
Well,
you and
this is
Shefty
the thing.
smack talking?
They probably, to be quite honest, they probably are not that concerned with me. I'm kind of a younger guy and working my way up the ladder, but I'm very aware of what they do, and I respect a lot of them, and I want to beat them. That's the reality. Like, you want to be the best at what you do. I want to be the best at what I do. So I look at what they do. I respect what they've accomplished, and I hope that I, at some point in my career, can be at least as successful. But really, I want to be more successful. I want to be the guy known as, the best reporter in my space, whatever that space is. It used to be investigative journalism. I did very well there. Now I'm on the NFL breaking news side, and I want to be the best there as well. So it's great. I mean, to have guys that you respect, that are really, really good at what they do, and having to work towards that standard, like a guy like Schefter, dude's the gold standard. So if I can get anywhere close to him at any point in my career, I've done something right.
To find this breaking news that you're going to be showing everybody this year, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Rand_Getlin. I've also got a personal website that I kind of maintain and put some hits up, whatever it be, whether I'm doing Rome or stuff like this, that I get to share with folks. And one thing I want to make clear is, like, I want to be as accessible as possible to everybody. When I got in contact with you guys through a mutual friend, this is the kind of stuff that I live for. It gives me a chance to be a regular human being when we do Rome and things like that. It's a little bit more buttoned up. And Jim is one of my favorite people in the universe. He's given me a chance.
It's a good shirt and good suit.
Thank
too.
you, sir.
It
That's
looks good
all my
buttoned up.
fiance.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with dressing well. If I ever look good, it's because of my fiance. So it's cool, man. It's an opportunity to sit down with real folks and talk about real issues and kind of be a real human being. So appreciate you guys having me on, and hope to be back.
Thank you so much, Rand.
Thanks
Great
for coming on.
time. I've learned a lot about football from this conversation. I mean, you know football. I mean, sometimes I just like to think like, oh, these reporters, like I know more. I'm like a true sports fan.
Nope.
Knowing, yeah, there's a reason
Absolutely
you're
not.
absolutely amazing at this. But Rand,
Thanks,
thank you
man.
so much. Great time.
Thanks, guys.
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Everyone, make sure to follow Rand on Twitter. Check out his website at randgetlin.com. Must follow. He's accessible. You got to access him. And thank you for watching another episode of The Zone. We will be back next week. Make sure to subscribe to the Lip TV, and hop over to the Lip TV 2 and subscribe to Lip TV 2 for full-length episodes of The Zone.